Hi, everyone, and welcome back, and welcome to anyone who's new. This session is going to be called The Nervous System Behind the Team Performance. Okay, so welcome, everyone. I'm really glad you're here. Before we dive into content, I do want to do something simple but important. I want to take a moment to arrive. Okay, you don't need to fix anything, you don't need to take notes yet. Just notice where you're sitting. Notice your breath, notice the pace of your body. If your nervous system has been running fast all day, this is your permission to slow it down just a notch. Because what we're talking about today isn't abstract, it's not theoretical, it's happening in real time inside your body and inside of your teams. And I want you to be present for it. Okay, so let's get clear on why we're here. The purpose of today's session is to help you see team performance through a different lens. Okay, not a motivation lens, not a personality lens, not a work ethic or attitude lens, okay, but a nervous system lens. Because when leaders understand what's happening underneath behavior, they stop managing symptoms and start shaping systems. So today is about understanding why capable people sometimes underperform, recognizing when pressure is starting to backfire, learning how regulation directly impacts clarity, execution, and collaboration. This is especially important for high performers and leaders because high performers don't struggle with the lack of drive, they struggle with their capacity. Okay. And when their capacity gets quietly depleted, that's when the real trouble happens. Okay. So let me tell you a little about what today is and what it's not. I want to name something up front. Today is not about teaching everything. Okay, we're not going to cover every nervous system skill, every trauma response, every leadership tool you could possibly use. That's not the goal for today. And if you continue joining these webinars, you'll realize that we'll go over more tools as the webinars continue. But today is about awareness. It's about helping you spot survival mode when it shows up at work. It's about understanding why logic seems to disappear under pressure. It's about recognizing how leadership behavior impacts nervous system safety, often unintentionally. Okay, so think of today as like a lens, not a manual, a framework, not a checklist, a starting point, not the finish line. Okay, if one thing clicks today, just one, that insight alone can change how you lead. All right. So here's how I invite you to engage today before we dive in. You don't need to diagnose yourself. You don't need to diagnose your team. And you definitely don't need to judge anything that comes up. Instead, I invite you to stay curious. When something resonates, notice it. When something challenges you, pause with it. When something feels familiar, that's data collection, not a problem. Okay, so this is a space for learning, not performance. And everything we talk about is meant to be used with compassion for yourself first and then others. All right. So, with that being said, let's get into it. Um, 1 second. All right, so we're back. Let's start here. All right, survival mode at work doesn't always look dramatic. All right. When people hear survival mode, I feel like they imagine panic and chaos, someone melting down or someone blowing up, right? But survival mode at work doesn't usually look dramatic. It looks like missed deadlines, short tempers, overworking but underperforming, people checking out, shutting down, or getting defensive, teams feeling stuck, tense, or like oddly disconnected. Okay. And this is the key reframe that we want to focus on today. When your team feels stuck, it's not a mindset issue, it's a nervous system issue. So, no amount of motivation, pressure, or pep talks will override biology. Okay. Because what's running the show underneath performance is actually protection. Okay. Nervous system. is your nervous system is trying to protect you or your team. Your team's nervous system is trying to protect them. And for you too, actually, to be honest. But so the brain's not optimizing, right? When you're in this mode of survival and your nervous system feels like it's on a fritz, your brain is not optimizing during that time. It's protecting. Okay. Your brain has one primary job, not protecting. Sorry. Okay. Your brain has one primary job. Okay. It's not productivity. It's not collaboration. It's not innovation. It is survival. Okay. And when the brain senses that threat, pressure, unpredictability, confusion, tone shifting, it doesn't ask, how can I do my best work? Right? It asks, am I safe right now? And when the answer is not a clear, yes, you're safe, okay, or if the answer is just blatantly no, everything else goes offline. Okay. Everything goes offline. Your executive function, which we'll talk about in another video, your ability to really plan and think, which is honestly all a part of executive function. But let me actually move forward and introduce you guys to the amygdala, okay? Because when everything goes offline, your brain goes offline. I think it's important to know about your brain's little smoke detector, which is the amygdala, okay? I also like to call the amygdala your brain's chihuahua, okay? You know, chihuahua's always on guard, always barking, always ready to jump and leap, okay? So that's your amygdala, okay? If your brain were a building, the amygdala would be the smoke detector. It doesn't analyze, it doesn't debate, it doesn't wait for facts. It reacts fast, okay? Its job is to scan for danger using facial expressions, tone of voice, body language, energy in the room, okay? And it asks one question on repeat. Am I safe right now? Am I safe right now? Okay? And here's why that matters at work. In a corporate setting, neutral feedback can feel like danger. Authority figures can activate fear. Urgency can feel like a threat. Silence can feel like rejection. I know all this stuff sounds emotional or, mental and all of that, but it's true. You work with humans. Okay. So people have different trauma responses, personal experiences, perceptions, attention to threat bias, all of that. Okay. People have histories of chronic stress, childhood neglect, trauma, unpredictable environments. Their smoke detector, their amygdala, is extra sensitive. Whether you understand it or not, it's true. Okay. You work with humans. Okay. So that alarm goes off even when there's no fire. That's not a weakness. It's an adaptation. Okay. Their nervous system learned to stay alert, stay ready, don't relax. All right. Next, let's talk about the hippocampus, okay? The brain's filing cabinet, right? Without a timestamp. The hippocampus is important when we're talking about the amygdala, okay? If the amygdala is the smoke detector, the hippocampus is the filing cabinet. It stores the memories, but more importantly, it stores how things felt. It remembers the last time this happened, I wasn't safe. It remembers that tone used to mean punishment. It remembers this environment required me to stay alert. So the problem is the hippocampus doesn't know time. It doesn't know you're an adult now. It doesn't know you're in a different setting. So when something feels familiar, the body just reacts as if the past, that what they went through, is happening right now. Right? Even if the leader is different, the situation is safer, the stakes are lower. The situation, the nervous system doesn't respond to logic. It responds to association. Okay. So that's how you get reactions that feel bigger than the moment, right? From people. So when the amygdala takes the wheel and your hippocampus is like, last time we were unsafe, this is what happened. Now your amygdala is beep, beep, beep. It hijacks your system, right? When the amygdala senses threat, it quite literally hijacks your system. Okay. So think of it like this. The prefrontal cortex, okay, the part of the brain responsible for planning, problem solving, perspective, emotional regulation, collaboration, all of those neat Executive functioning skills, that gets shoved into the passenger seat. Sometimes it feels like it might not have even gotten in the car. Okay. This is why under pressure, people experience black and white thinking, right? All or nothing thinking, misreading the intention of someone's actions, emotional flooding, feeling overwhelmed, overloaded emotionally, impulsivity, or even shutting down, right? People don't respond poorly, they react automatically because survival always moves faster than reflection. Okay. So, what does survival mode actually look like, especially in the workplace? This is where I feel like leaders get it wrong. Okay. Survival mode doesn't always look like chaos, right? It looks like everyday behavior. And most of your individuals you work with, your team, if they're in survival mode, they feel overwhelmed, their nervous system's dysregulated, the expectations are high, but the care for them is low, all that kind of stuff, they will either slip into fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. And what that looks like I said, is not going to look like this big chaotic scene. I mean, it might. You never know what kind of team you're working with, but a lot of times it looks like everyday behavior, right? So if you have a teammate, if you have a colleague or a teammate who falls into the fight category, you'll notice that they become defensive. They blame, they want more control. There's a lot of conflict around them, maybe rigid thinking, okay? And sometimes it's not the team, maybe it's within you, right? Which fight response do you kind of slip into? If they're in flight, that looks like procrastination, avoidance, disappearing from meetings. I'll get to it later. That's flight response. Freeze response might look like being indecisive, being overwhelmed, analysis paralysis. You're stuck on decision making, right? Just feeling stuck overall. And then fawn can often look like placating, people pleasing, overworking, saying yes even when you're extremely exhausted, burnout disguised as dedication. Okay. So pay attention to these things when it comes to your team. All right. And I want you guys to say this clearly. Okay. I need you to remember this piece about this. These are not personality flaws, they are nervous system responses. And guess what? Our nervous system can be soothed. Okay. So there's a few mistakes that I feel like in leadership roles we sometimes make. Okay. We sometimes mislabel survival. So here are some mistakes that cost the team, right? It costs the team's trust and performance. Survival responses from your team often get labeled as a bad attitude, lack of motivation, unprofessional behavior, poor time management, resistance, not taking the initiative, right? And don't get me wrong, I mean, there's some people on our team that genuinely is like, they got to go. Who hired them in the first place, right? But for the most part, you should have enough discernment to have hired a good team. And then you start to notice these patterns. Trust that you hired the right team and that what you're seeing with the attitude, the lack of motivation, the unprofessional behavior, the poor time management, the resistance, the not taking initiative, attribute that to their nervous system and think about how safe the environment is for them. Think of how regulated the environment is for them. Think about the expectations being placed without clear instruction. Okay? Trust that you hired the right people and realize that these survival responses have an underlying theme. Their system is overloaded. That's it. And when leaders mislabel survival as defiance or incompetence, that's when pressure increases even more for your team, which only deepens dysregulation. Okay. So there's a way we can shift as leaders to support and move from control to conditions. Okay, so now here's the reframe. Great leadership isn't about lowering the standards. That's never what I'm going to ask you to do. It is never what I'm asking you to do. Lowering your standards, lowering the vision for your business, lowering expectations. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying if your expectations and your clarity are mismatched, something's got to give, right? But it is about creating conditions where people can meet those standards. Okay, so when you as a leader can recognize nervous system signals, that's when compassion replaces control. Your team wants to feel like you care and that they're heard. That's when curiosity replaces criticism. What's going on with them? What's happening? Right? They're being seen. You're getting curious about their situation, curious as to why they're falling behind. This is when clarity replaces pressure. I'm not going to pressure you to hurry up and pressure you to do this. Ask, was I clear on my instruction? If not, how can I be more clear about what we're looking for? Here's the goal, and here's how I can lay it out for you in a way that is that leaves no room for confusion, but is clear, right? Clarity replaces pressure, and psychological safety then starts to increase. Regulation improves and performance follows. Okay. Your business can scale. You can meet those standards. Okay. You can follow through with that vision you have for your company because performance will follow once you nurture your team like this. Okay. Regulation comes before performance. All right. You work with a team of humans. So, how does the nervous system actually heal? Well, healing, it doesn't happen through insight alone, right? It happens from experience, right? The nervous system needs new experiences. It needs new information. It needs repetition. Those new experiences create safety, okay? So, some skills that could help, just some side skills that can help outside of clear communication, clear expectation, empathy, compassion, goal setting, breaking things down into micro goals, right? Here are some other skills that can help that aren't necessarily so workforce heavy, I guess. So, some skills that can help are grounding. Okay, grounding and orientation, helping people to learn how to ground when they feel overwhelmed. Okay, here's some ways you can ground, right? You can notice your breathing, check your surroundings, do a body check. What do you feel? Do you feel warm? Is your hand shaking? Ask yourself how you feel emotionally. I'm feeling nervous and it's really dysregulating. What are my thoughts? What are my urges? Well, my thoughts are this is overwhelming. My urge is to storm out of this meeting, right? If you can kind of pay attention to all those things, that's how you can ground yourself. Some other skills that can help are breath work. I love 4-7-8 deep breathing. That's when you breathe in through your nose for 4 seconds, you hold for 7 seconds, and then you exhale with noise for 8 seconds. That helps me so much when I feel overwhelmed. And sometimes people just need to stop and do some breath work in between projects or something. Pausing before meaning making. So just pause to process what's happening, what's being said. It's okay. Let it be a little awkward, but remind people to practice pausing before they attach meaning to whatever they think is happening because our perspectives can be a little warped, especially if we're on high alert or feeling threatened, right? So just pause before you attach meaning to anything that's happening. Okay. And then also reality checking your interpretations. So, kind of the same thing, but just give yourself a reality check on the way that you're interpreting the world around you. Each regulated moment teaches the brain that I can feel this and still be safe. And that's how change sticks. Okay. So, leadership that understands the nervous system doesn't just manage people, but it builds environments where people can think clearly, decide wisely, collaborate effectively, perform sustainably. And that is how teams thrive. That is how leaders scale impact. Okay. So I'm going to leave you with this question. Which matters more on your team right now? Pressure or safety? If this conversation resonates with you, if you're feeling that performance issues might actually be nervous system signals, join us for the next session where we'll break down exactly how survival mode shows up day to day at work and what to do about this in real time. Okay. Because when the mind clicks, performance follows. All right. And I want you guys to have high performing teams and I want you to be high achievers. Okay. This is about elevation. This isn't about blaming anyone. This isn't about minimizing people's emotional experiences or their trauma. This is just realizing you work with real humans. They have real nervous systems. A lot of the responses are biological and it can be managed with the right level of support. That is how you optimize productivity. That is how you optimize executive functioning. That is how you have a scalable impact. Okay. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and let you guys go. Thank you for joining, and I will see you guys in next week's webinar. You guys are more than welcome to join. Feel free to register in the link, and see you then.